Hey, Fact Fusion fans! Today, we're diving into a world long before the colorful flowers we see around us today existed. Imagine a time when the Earth looked very different, with strange plants and no bright blooms to attract bees and butterflies. But insects were already buzzing around, busy and communicating with each other in fascinating ways. How did they do it without flowers? Let's explore this ancient mystery and uncover the secrets of insect communication from millions of years ago. The world before flowers. Let's travel back in time to a world where there were no flowers, over 140 million years ago. Back then, Earth was covered in plants, but not the kind we see today. Instead of roses, sunflowers, or daisies, there were ferns, cycads, and conifers. These were plants that didn't produce colorful blooms or fragrant scents. Without flowers, the world was a much less colorful place, but it was still full of life. Insects like beetles, flies, and dragonflies were already buzzing around. These ancient insects were very different from the ones we know today. They had to survive in a world without flowers, which meant finding other ways to get food, find mates, and avoid predators. Flowers today help insects find nectar and pollen, but back then, insects had to rely on other plants and different methods to communicate and survive. They had to be very clever to make it in such a different world. This time period was called the Jurassic period, and it was a time of big changes and big creatures, not just for insects, but for all life on Earth. 2. Chemical communication, the secret language of smells. Even before flowers existed, insects had already developed a very effective way to talk to each other, through smells. They used chemicals called pheromones to communicate, which is like having a secret language. Pheromones are special substances that insects release to send messages. These chemical signals can tell other insects where to find food, how to find a mate, or even to warn them of danger. For example, if an ancient beetle found a tasty leaf, it might release a pheromone to let other beetles know. Or, if a group of insects sensed a predator nearby, they could release a different pheromone to warn others to stay away. These chemical signals were very powerful because they could travel over long distances and carry lots of information. Even today, insects like ants use pheromones to leave trails to food sources. This method of communication is so effective that it's still used by many insects today, millions of years after it first appeared. Imagine a world where insects were constantly sending invisible messages through the air, a secret network of smells that kept them connected and helped them survive. 3. Sound communication, the ancient insect orchestra. Besides using chemicals, insects also communicated through sounds, creating what we might call an insect orchestra. Have you ever heard crickets chirping at night or cicadas buzzing during the day? These sounds are how insects talk to each other. Even millions of years ago, insects were already making noises to communicate. They didn't have flowers to guide them, so they had to get creative. Many insects, like ancient crickets and cicadas, produce sounds by rubbing parts of their bodies together. This process is known as stridulation. For example, crickets rub their wings together to create that familiar chirping sound. These sounds served many purposes, like attracting mates, warning others of danger, or establishing territory. Imagine walking through a forest filled with the sounds of insects calling out to each other. It would have been a noisy, lively place, even without the colors and scents of flowers. The ability to produce and recognize these sounds helped insects find each other in dense forests where it might be hard to see or smell each other. Sound communication was like an early version of texting or calling someone. It allowed insects to stay in touch even when they were far apart. Before, visual signals, colors, and movements. Even without flowers, some insects used visual signals to communicate with each other. Visual communication involves using colors, patterns, and movements to send messages. In a world without bright flowers, insects still found ways to stand out. Some ancient insects had bright colors or patterns on their bodies that helped them send important signals. For example, a bright color might warn predators that an insect was poisonous or tasted bad. This is called aposematism, and it's a form of visual warning that says, "Stay away." Other insects might have used movements to communicate. They could wave their antenna, flick their wings, or perform a little dance to show off to a potential mate or to warn others to stay away from their territory. Even without flowers, the world of insects was full of action and visual signals. These visual cues were especially useful in environments where it was noisy or where scents might not travel far. Insect communication through sight is like a sign language of the animal world, allowing them to pass messages without a sound. Number 5, touch and vibration. Feeling the buzz. Another fascinating way insects communicated millions of years ago was through touch and vibrations. Have you ever seen ants bumping into each other? They're using touch to pass on messages. Insects have always been very sensitive to vibrations, which are tiny movements or shakes that can travel through the ground, leaves, or branches. Imagine an insect tapping its legs or body against a leaf to create vibrations. Other insects could feel these vibrations through their legs or antennae, helping them understand messages like danger ahead or food over here. This method of communication was especially helpful in thick forests where sound and smell might not travel very far. It's like having a built-in messaging system that doesn't rely on sight or sound. Vibrations are still used by many insects today, such as spiders detecting prey in their webs or ants feeling the vibrations of approaching enemies. By using vibrations, insects could stay connected and aware of their surroundings, even in the darkest and noisiest environments. 6. Evolution of communication, adapting to a changing world. As the world began to change, so did the ways insects communicated. Around 130 million years ago, flowering plants began to appear on Earth, bringing with them bright colors and sweet scents that we are so familiar with today. Insects didn't just stick to their old ways of communicating, they adapted to the new world with flowers. Flowers offered new opportunities for insects, like bees and butterflies, to find food and spread pollen. But they still kept their old methods of communication, like using pheromones, sounds, and vibrations. This adaptation shows how flexible and innovative insects are. They can change their habits and behaviors to survive in new environments. The close relationship between insects and flowers developed over millions of years, creating a partnership that's crucial for the survival of both. Insects like bees became important pollinators for flowers, while flowers provided them with food. This evolutionary partnership shows how life on Earth is always changing, adapting, and finding new ways to survive and thrive. It's a reminder that even the smallest creatures can have a big impact on the world around them. 7. Why it matters. The importance of understanding insect communication. Understanding how insects communicated before flowers existed isn't just a fun trip down memory lane. It's also important for science and nature today. Studying these ancient methods of communication helps scientists learn more about the evolution of insects and how they adapted to their environments over millions of years. It also helps us understand the complex ecosystems that existed long before humans appeared on Earth. By learning how insects communicated and survived without flowers, we can better appreciate the incredible diversity and adaptability of life on our planet. Insects are not just pests or tiny creatures we barely notice. They are key players in our ecosystems, helping to pollinate plants, decompose organic matter, and serve as food for other animals. Understanding their ancient communication methods gives us insight into their roles in nature and how they can contribute to the health of our environment. It also reminds us of the importance of conserving these creatures and their habitats to maintain the balance of nature. So, there you have it. Even before flowers brightened up our world, insects had already developed amazing ways to communicate and survive. From chemical signals to sound, sight, touch, and vibrations, these tiny creatures were masters of communication. Isn't it incredible to think about how these ancient methods are still used by insects today? Next time you see a bee buzzing around or ants marching in a line, remember, they're talking to each other using a language millions of years old. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Fact Fusion, and click the bell icon to stay updated on our latest content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.